Okay, I'm putting it on the YouTube. So I just have to like put this on something.
Stand? Do you want to put it on here?
No, those are the sour lips. You can't burn the sour
No, but
lips.
I'm in it the whole
Okay,
time.
fine. I'm taking it.
Put it on here. Oh my gosh, my ring light. Yeah.
Oh, you have a ring light.
Can I put my ring light?
Sure, or I'll just put it on the stuckle box.
Okay, put it.
Whatever you want.
That's fine, it's fine then.
You want to ring light it?
No, it's fine.
Is the lighting good? Should I use a filter?
You can use the filter for
Okay,
you.
great.
No, you're okay.
Okay. No, there's no one there yet, but they'll come when they come.
Okay, so ignore them.
Okay,
Start for us.
so who knows what?
Okay, so literally Emmy was here. I filled in Miriam. Chevy knows I literally just said 4 worlds, 10 rungs. The last of the bottom goes into the first of the next, and then I'm not in the top one, even though we just assumed I was, but I'm not.
Right.
Except Chevy said I could be. Just kidding. I said I'm not in the top world.
Yeah, I know you think you are. Okay.
And that's it. Does anyone have any questions on the that there's 4 worlds and 10 rungs? That
Oh, I don't know.
You're very focused on that.
I'm very focused.
Okay, but
on.
you're not. You have to focus on the purpose of it.
I'm not the one giving the share. I literally was
Okay,
just.
great. All right. Well, you apparently are giving post-its out. So.
I'm not giving
Okay,
this
great.
is mine.
All right. So hi, I'm Neve. Whoever doesn't know me, and we did a whole bunch of intro stuff, and I think it's somewhere on YouTube or something.
Yeah. it is.
So if
If
anyone
anyone
wants
wants it, I can send you the link.
if anyone wants to get some background on why Chassidus is, or where it came about, or why it came about, or why the Baal Shem Tov created it, or revealed it, better off saying that, why he revealed it to the world, there's a whole bunch of that. But Mickey doesn't like intros, so we're not doing intros. So I'm just going to get right into it. Because
Somebody really wants it, but I just like to get in there.
Okay.
We'll catch up.
All right, great. Okay, so we talked about, I'm just going to give like a 1-minute summary on this because this was a long thing from the last time. Basically, we talked about how Hashem created the world. And that the way Hashem created the world, the way Hashem created the world was in a way where he had a lot of light to give, and he wanted it to exist in a dark place so that we could find him in it. And so therefore, he had to give us a way to exist, but he couldn't give that to us with all of his love. So if Hashem is just like the sun and a lot of light, and he wants to give us light so that we can exist, he couldn't really do it the way he really wanted to initially, which initially he was like, hey, I love you. I only have goodness. I want to give you all of it and all of me for you guys to exist. But we couldn't handle that because we're finite. We're not like him. And so he created this whole world and nothing worked out. Everything kind of fell apart because there was too much light. It was like being, brighted in the eyes with flashlight, and no one could see anything, and everything sort of fell apart, and that's called the world of Tohu. And so therefore, when Hashem created the world, he was like, okay, how do I make this sustainable? How do I give you guys my bracha? How do I give you sustenance? How do I let you live in this world without feeling me? Because that's the whole test of this, right? We can't feel that Hashem is here. We have to go out and find him in the darkness. How do I allow you to exist? But because your existence is dependent on me, I have to be connected to you at all times, or else you cease to exist. Because every single one of us has made things before, right? But the way we create something from something. So if I want to create candy, I take a whole bunch of ingredients and mix them together and do what I do, and now I have candy. All I essentially did was change the form of one thing to the next. And by the way, if anyone has questions at any point, don't be shy, raise your hand, call out, do whatever you want to do. So Hashem said, because there used to just be Hashem. So he's like, okay, I want to create, but there's nothing here but me. And in order to make you guys feel distinct and independent so that you can actually serve me, right? Because a drop in the ocean doesn't feel like a drop in the ocean. It just feels like the ocean. So Hashem had to say, how do I take out a bunch of drops from me, which is the main big ocean, and let you guys feel like you exist? I have to move you so far away from me to the point that you feel existence. And when he first tried it, he's like, great, I'm going to give you all the ocean, and nothing felt independent, and it didn't work out. So Hashem was like, I got to create a way for you guys to consider yourselves independent beings so that you can come out and find me in this world. But your existence is tied to me, meaning because Hashem creates something from nothing, which Hashem is the only thing in the universe that can create something from nothing, Hashem has to constantly give that nothing or that something life. Which is why when you say in davening Mechadesh B'tuvo B'cholim Tamid Maaseh Bereshit, you're literally saying that Hashem is recreating creation every single day, but it's really every single millisecond. Because when you create something from something, like everyone here, whoever has kids, once they come out of you, yes, you need to nurture them, but they exist with or without you. You cut that umbilical cord off and they don't need you anymore, right? But that's because you took something and you changed it to something. This candy exists with or without me once I make it. I'm simply changing forms. But when I create something from nothing, which is very hard to comprehend, I always think of like Bewitched or I Dream of Jeannie, or you guys are all too young, probably not know what it is. But basically the wiggle your nose and something appears out of nowhere, right? Okay, great. Very good table. Okay, great. So when that happens, you're like, oh, something just appeared out of thin air. We can't really do that because the only way we can create anything is by changing forms. And when you change forms, I can take that clay wheel spinny thing and turn it into a pot. And now it exists, even when my hands are not on it. I can mold it into something. I'm just shaping things. But when something exists from nothing, that nothing has to be giving that something existence all the time. So the way Hashem creates in a way is that originally he's like, okay, I have to let you guys exist. And so I have to create you something from nothing because there was nothing but me. And now I have to let you feel independent. So I have to keep you alive at all times, because if I stop saying your name, you cease to exist. If I stop giving you that effluence of energy, you guys all disappear. But I have to give it to you in a way where you don't feel my existence.
Oh, that was another thing that every second we're alive is because Hashem is making us be alive. Like he's breathing our name at every single second. And I like that. You said that last time.
Right. And the reason is because he creates you from nothing. You weren't here. And so because you weren't here, he has to constantly say your existence. He can't put you on autopilot. That's why nature is tricky, because you don't feel like he's making it run. The fact is that the sun rises and the sun sets and you feel like things just sort of happen. But the trick behind nature is to know that if Hashem doesn't say, hey, sun, rise, moon, rise, do whatever you're going to do, then none of it exists here, okay? Because remember, it was just him. And from his perspective, it's still just him. So he had to create in this way. And that's why Mickey's talking about these ladders and the rungs. Because what he did was he said, okay, I have to let you guys exist, so I'm going to give you my light, but I have to move it so far away from me that you feel like you don't even resemble me anymore. And so he created these 400 levels that could be dumbed down into 40. And basically, he said, okay, I'm going to filter the amount of light I give you on the way down. So if I'm this super bright sun, and I have the inner orb of the sun, and then the outer reflection, and then the rays go out, even if you're 1,000 light years away from the sun, it's still really freaking hot up there, right? And then you get through the ozone layer and you come all the way down here, and yeah, you can go outside and get some sun, and you know, if you're in Mexico, you'll get burnt, but if you're in other places, you'll be fine, or you can put on sunscreen and you can receive the light and the warmth of the sun because you're so far away, right? It's, for us, we can look up in the sky and see that there's a sun. So it's easy to know where it's coming from. But the way Hashem created was in a way where he's like, okay, I have to let you exist, but you're not going to see any resemblance. You're not going to be able to see that that little drop of water that you're drinking originated in an ocean and came through a lake and came through rivers and came through ponds, because all you're going to see is this little drop. And our job is to believe that. So what he did was he created this system called Seder Hishtalshelut, or Seder Hishtalshelus. And basically, it came from, he basically created like a curtain system, or like a veil system, where he basically keeps, imagine like those little babushka dolls where you open one up and there's smaller ones. He basically is like, okay, I'm going to give you myself, I'm going to package me, because that's all there is, right? It wasn't like he took something and made that into us. He's like, I'm going to give you me. I'm going to keep packaging myself smaller and smaller and smaller until you guys are so small, like I'm so small that now you don't even feel like I exist, right? And so he created this veiling system, and initially there was one cutoff point where it was just him, and then he's like, okay, this is the first veil. It's going to be the darkest, thickest piece of cloth, and the light on the other side is still going to be really bright because it's only gone through one veil, but it already has some sort of separation where it no longer can relate to what's above it. Because if someone has $900 billion,
Okay, and that's the first.
wait, we haven't gotten there. And then someone else has $800 billion. The guy with 800 billion has less than the 900, but they're relatable. But if a guy has infinity dollars, it doesn't matter how many hundreds of billions of dollars you have, you still are non-existent. So coming from infinity to something, a quantifiable number, has to be like the master cutoff, okay? That has to be like the first real break in the chain where it's like, okay, we're starting something where you guys can no longer see on the other side, okay? Because if Hashem's infinite, then nothing's relatable to him. On the other side of the veil, all of a sudden you can start to quantify things and say, okay, this compares to that. This is smaller. This has more light. This has less light. This is loftier. Now, after this contraction, Hashem creates this world called Atzilus. It's this high, lofty world where things are so close to Hashem that they feel like they exist, but like not really, because they're so close to the sun, they kind of just get like absorbed in it. And every world has 10 spheras, or if you've ever heard of these spheras in Kabbalah, like sometimes you see like these like artisty things, and we thought, don't go on the spot rant, but like the circles and the whatever, the rings, basically there's like 10 faculties of each world, where imagine that there's just 10 veils on their way down within each world. So in the top world, the top level has the most amount of light, and every time there's another veil, there's less and less and less light, all the way down 10 levels. The last world, the last sphera of the top world, is technically the bridge that allows light to flow into the next world below, which is the world of Bria. Now, within these worlds, the 10 faculties, they're going to be very relevant to everything we talk about, because they resemble Hashem's makeup and how he creates the world and how he created us. So the 10 levels are Chokhmah is the top one, Bina and Da'at, and then Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, Malchut. So Malchus is the top, the lowest of the low, but also Malchus is what gives life to the next world. So Malchus is like this big collection pot, like this mouth, that speaks the next world into existence. So it's like, okay, we're going to diminish light all the way from Chokhmah all the way down to Malchus in that world. And now when we want to go down a level, Malchus creates the next world. So even though Malchus is the lowest of Sphera within a world, it's also the bridge or the highest part of the next world. So the next world after Atzilus is Bria, or creation. The reason it's called Bria is because that's when things start to feel their own independent existence, because they've already skipped the world of Atzilus, and now they kind of feel like they exist. So super high tzaddikim, their neshamas come from this world. The highest malachim are in this world. After that, so that world has 10 levels also. The same Chokhmah Bina Da'at all the way down. Malchus of Bria creates Chokhmah of Yetzira, the world of formation. So once things, and you'll see that a lot of this like is very related to gestational things, about how things develop, and after this world of Yetzira, of formation, comes the world of Asiya, the world of action. The world of action is the lowest one. And basically the worlds are sort of mirrored, but with less and less and less light, because there's a big cutoff at the end of each world where Malchus spits out the next world. And the spheres are diminishing light all the way down from the top as you go all the way down. So at the end of this whole chain, all of this stuff had to happen before Bereshit bara Elokim et hashamayim v'ha'aretz. So all of that had to happen. When you get to the lowest of the lows, which is Malchut of Asiya, that is technically the Shechina, Hashem's Shechina. Whenever Hashem speaks things into existence on a physical plane, that's like sort of the mouth where everything kind of pops out. So spiritual form is degraded so much from the top down that it becomes physical form. The only way to create physical form in anything in this world is via diminishing the light so much that there's such a lack of light that it looks like darkness, because darkness has no substance of its own. Darkness is not a thing. It's just a lack of light. And so when you diminish light so much from the top down, at the end of the chain, when you get to the lowest of lows, where there's no more light left to diminish, and there's only one ray of light left, or one drop of water left, that is called Malchus of Asiya, and that is this world that we are in. So we're the only physical world, and anything Gashmi is a result of the diminishing of light on the way down, so much so that our form resembles nothing like our Creator. Now, spiritually, our makeup is exactly like our Creator. And we use all these anthropomorphisms to explain how we can understand Hashem, because we live in this world bound by our brains and our intellect and time and space. So we can't understand things that are beyond that. We can only relate to what we know. And therefore, when we try to understand Hashem and we talk about godliness, you have to know that when I refer to these worlds, and Chassidus refers to these worlds, it's really talking about, it's giving us a way to sort of picture, like if I had a Pictionary board, I could draw these ladders and all this other stuff. I have no way to know if that's what it really looks like, because in these spiritual worlds, right, you don't see with your eyes, you see with your neshama sees with its intellect, right? Just like when you're dreaming, right? You don't need actual eyes because your eyes are closed. But the only way to picture these things where they could make any sense to us, because remember, you're trying to understand on a spiritual matter with your physical brain, you have to know that all of these are mashals in order to be able to understand a loftier concept. Okay, so Chassidus in general has two elements to it. The one that people most associate Chassidus with is they think it's the inner depth of the Torah. Now, while it is the innermost layer of the Torah, it also is like a flashlight that sheds light on every other level of the Torah. So it's sort of multifaceted, which we're going to get into today. So Chassidus is not necessarily, I just want to make clear, it's not necessarily like, oh, we're all learning Kabbalah and we're learning the inner secrets and all this other stuff. Yes, I'm talking about lofty concepts, but Chassidus also has a way to shine light on even the most revealed, plain pshat that you could ever imagine in any Gemara, and it's almost acts like a lens where you sort of get to wear these 4D goggles, and you get to see the same thing you were looking at, but now it looks a little bit different. You get to see a deeper layer. So that could be for pshat, it could be for the remes, for the drush, for the son. It's all the different ways of extrapolating and understanding Torah, while at the same time, it also serves as, if we have these four worlds, and let's say we go the other way around, let's say that the lowest world of Asiya is related to the pshat. So if you're just reading the text of the Chumash or whatever, that's the pshat, that relates to the world of Asiya. You're going to see this familiarity where the worlds, us, the Torah, they're all mirrored after each other, because Hashem had this blueprint, which is the Torah, and he said, okay, I'm going to create the world by looking in it, right? It says Hashem looked in the Torah, and that's how he created it. So because of that, the filtration system, the order of contraction that he created, and the worlds within it and the spheres within it, they all resemble us and the Torah. So you'll hear me talk about like different like levels. And I know, and I've seen this before, when I talk about the different worlds, people are so used to trying to attain a certain holiness, attain a certain spirituality, that their focus is, how do I get to this level, right? And I just want to make it clear that no matter what level you get to, Mickey's going to try harder to be better than you, okay? So this is clear. But you don't have to think so much in terms of like, how do I get to this level? Because that's not necessarily the purpose of our existence. Because people are going to ask this, I'm just going to kind of confront this. In Gan Eden, if someone dies, God forbid, and goes up to Shamayim, the higher they go, the better that is, right? Because they're closer to the source. And Gan Eden for Jewish people is that you get to enjoy Ziv HaShechina. You get to enjoy the rays of the Shechina, of Hashem's actual light, meaning you get to wear a spacesuit with SPF 5000 and you get to be closer to the sun without getting burnt. You have these super goggles and you get to see godliness from a closer up view. And the higher you go, the better it is, right? Now, Goyim have their own Gan Eden, and that's for them. But ours is very much if you are, you attain heaven, and you get to go to the world of Asiya, and let's say your realm, you dwell in the sphere of, Tiferet of Asiya, right? So Chochmah Bina Dat Chesed Tiferet, you're number 6 of the lowest level, right? You can work your way up by your family doing mitzvahs for you, by giving tzedakah in your name, and that's why you have an aliyah for your neshama, because you're literally going higher and higher, closer to the source, right? So when someone says, oh, make a l'chaim, make a bracha, do something, right? That's what you're doing for the neshama. But that's not the purpose of our creation, even though on Shabbos, those neshamas get to bump up a level, right? So Shabbos, the neshamas that are in, Chochmah of Asiya, they get to go to Chochmah of Yetzira for Shabbos, right? So they get a little bump. Shabbos and Chag, everything, we'll talk about Klippas later, but everything gets elevated a step.
Then we go back down after?
Yeah, so every Shabbos, neshamas get a one world boost. So, yeah.
Make sure you're like a really good kids. And
It's
the
like
pay.
100 levels.
Yeah.
Bump
So,
you up super high.
and also, just to be clear that within each level, technically, within each sphera of each world, each sphera contains within it its own 10 spheras with the same. So, I just think of these like a human body, and every sphera has within it, because we have within ourselves Chochmah, Bina, and Dat. We have wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, or wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. We have Chesed, we have Gvura, we have Tiferet, the harmony of both, Rachamim, right? We have all of these faculties within our own souls, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But basically, within each sphera, it's like its own existence that encompasses the same sort of shape and form as the whole bigger picture. Okay, so technically it has this aspect that it's constantly reducing and diminishing Hashem's light, so we feel like we can exist but also have to find him, right? So it's dark enough that we get to see a little bit of light, just enough to get around, but not enough to know that that light came from the sun. But the whole purpose of all of it has nothing to do with us going upwards or elevating upwards. That's not the be all end all. So we'll get to that. Any questions
What
about
is?
anything?
We'll get to it.
We'll get to it.
Okay.
Questions?
No, we're supposed to bring Mashiach.
That's the deal.
We're supposed to be the goodness and bring the goodness.
And it's once Mashiach comes, that is.
Yeah?
Yeah, I mean, if you
That's what
flow
you said last time.
if you flow all of the light from above in a filterless way, the way Hashem tried the first time and it didn't work out,
There we go.
then
Work now.
yeah, then that would be the be all end all.
Get that?
Questions? Good.
Keep
Okay.
going.
All right.
Does everyone get that? Okay, go.
All right. So don't get too focused on these worlds. We're gonna talk about them. There's lots of other in-depth detail about all of these worlds, about how they hold vessels. Each sphere has a vessel, and the vessel's holding lights, and the vessel has an external part of the vessel and an internal part of the vessel, and all this other stuff that you don't need to worry about right now, but we can get to that. Okay, so basically, what I want to do is tackle like different topics within Chassidus that talk about things that are relevant, and you'll see that the purpose of Chassidus is not to be some big lofty thing, even though it's to actually bring light to everything in the mundane, everything in your regular lives, and that is why it speaks to me so much, because I didn't like this concept of you have your daily life and then you have your Jewish life, and they're very separate. The whole thing is that it intermingles all of it to show you that godliness is everywhere, and there's a lot of Hasidic concepts that never really existed prior to the Baal Shem Tov revealing Chassidus that people didn't even recognize, like that God was everywhere, right? So a lot of the things that you probably know right now stem from Chassidus without you even knowing, because it became like common practice among Jews in general. So I don't know how you are with time, but I would definitely start
You
this.
started,
Okay.
'cause
All right. You
I
tell me.
gotta bug out if you-
Okay. You tell me. Yeah. I don't want that. Okay. So this is an essay. Basically, I'm just going to give you some background. So this is an essay on the essence of Chassidus. Now, I've given a whole lot of introductory stuff on what Chassidus is and how it came about, but this really tackles the essence in a very in-depth way. And also, because you guys have all had good scholastic backgrounds, I figure it's easier for me to go into the text and expose you to that instead of just me talking for a while. So as I go through it, I might read a bunch of Hebrew and then explain it, but if someone has questions or wants to stop me or wants a source or wants something.
Why do you have to read a bunch of Hebrew? Just say it in English.
No, it's nice to hear.
I don't understand Hebrew, so.
Right, I'm going to translate everything. I'm translating
Say,
everything.
mine goes, do the Hebrew super fast.
Yeah, super fast. Yeah, and then I'm translating.
Here's a rough Megillah tester.
Very fast?
Like, I've never.
Right.
But yeah,
Okay.
like that.
Okay. So, all right, so we're just going to get started. So this is called On the Essence of Chassidus, and basically it talks about the whole essence of what it is, not all the background, just from a pure Torah perspective and why it was brought to the world and what its purpose is to serve here, okay? And hopefully those will answer a lot of your questions about what it is. And the reason I give you this whole background about the creation of the world and all that is because those are like fundamental principles that if you don't understand that, you're not going to understand majority of Hasidic texts, whether it comes from Baal Shem Tov, or if it came from Rabbi Nachman, or came from the Baal Tanya, or came from whatever. Yeah, these are like sort of core concepts, okay? So this is by the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and he basically talks about he would give these things called ma'amarim, and every week he would give something called a sicha. A sicha was just like a Shabbos drasha that he would give on holidays and Shabbos, and on special occasions. And he didn't just do this. The Baal Shem Tov used to do it. The Maggid of Mezrich used to do it. The Baal Tanya used to do it. Rabbi Nachman used to do it. He used to give these things called ma'amarim, and ma'amarim are widely considered to be the term is divrei Elokim Chaim, that Hashem would essentially speak through the throats of these tzaddikim and give new Torah. So even though there is no such thing as new Torah, because everything that was revealed in this world was revealed to Moshe at Har Sinai and learned with Hashem, learned it one-on-one with Moshe. These are things that it's not like, hey, a collection of ideas. This is something these are things that were groundbreaking. So normally these went for hours, and they were normally given on Shabbos and Chag and certain occasions, and people used to sit and memorize. There were people whose jobs were to sit and listen, and then afterwards they would write it all down. And usually they would give them to the different rebbeim to make edits or source or whatever. So these are like usually very lofty and long things, but we'll do it in parts, and they're super powerful. So like, for example, when the Lubavitcher Rebbe used to give them, he used to tie a handkerchief to his hand, and he used to like tie it to the table, and his eyes were closed the whole time because it was like he wasn't even here. He was like speaking them through nevuah. So a lot of these different tzaddikim of the Hasidic movement would do this, and it was always a very big deal because it's like, wait, Hashem's going to speak new Torah to us, right? So this isn't blasphemous by any means. This isn't like we're changing the religion or anything. This is just us being like, hey, it's time to reveal some new insights on Torah. And so here goes. So this one is tackles Chassidus specifically. Okay. So he says, when it comes to the idea of Torah to Chassidus, what is Chassidus coming to teach on top of what was already revealed to us in Torah? So there's lots of different sources and different things. So one of them, in the time of the Baal Shem Tov, the world was in like a fainted state. The world was he calls it italfut, so it was like almost unconscious. And by the Baal Shem Tov revealing what he revealed to the world, it was like he was able to shock the system of the Jewish people. Another thing is that if you ask the Gemara what a chassid is someone who burns his nails. So you're supposed to dispose of your nails. A Rasha leaves them out. Pregnant woman could step on them. It's no good. Which is ridiculous because even if you just cut them and they fall and then you move them, nothing happens to the pregnant woman. But it's like to be above and beyond the law. A Rasha does nothing. A tzaddik will bury them. And it says that a chassid is one who burns them. And why?
What's the person who flushes them down the toilet?
It's like burial.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
here's the quote.
Yeah. So they probably caused a lot of like whale miscarriages or something. I don't know. Okay. All right. So a chassid burns them. Now you're not really allowed to burn any part of your body because you're supposed to take care of your body. So why does a chassid burn them? A chassid burns them because this concept of a chassid became someone who goes above the letter of the law to make sure to protect the Jewish people and the Torah. So that's
Why
another.
does it matter once it's off your body?
It doesn't, but that's the thing. They go.
No, you're not allowed to burn something on you, but once it's off your body, it's irrelevant. Who
Oh,
cares?
but still part of you, like organs and stuff.
Why? If I have a strand of hair, or
Yeah.
even every single person that throws out their placenta or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
why is that not considered?
It's a good question, but basically the Gemara in Nida talks about it, and I could look in there and tell you.
Okay, fine.
And
And,
tell
and
you,
as far as hair,
and tell you what it is.
I'm saying once it's not connected to you, what does it matter?
It doesn't even require you to do that, but the whole idea of being
Exactly,
pious,
going beyond the letter
Chassidus is
of
like,
that.
I'm going to go above and beyond what is even required of me, just to be extra safe, to make sure that I'm one with my Hashem.
I think there's also a lot to do with fingernails, like
specifically.
with like Havdalah, we put our fingernails.
And you're supposed to like see the shadow of,
Right, and it's like something to do with like being human and like nails. I remember hearing that one.
like specifically nails.
To be careful with nails.
Nails have the most klipa and the most impurity in your body. Yeah.
You know, one time I heard that someone like long nails
Yeah.
are equivalent to like evil.
Oh no!
Yeah.
I was about to say, like, I'm kind of feeling that.
I don't remember the source.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good
I think
to
that's
know.
also because like witches used to have long nails. They used to be like witches.
Right, but that's not
And
in
now
the
it's like
Torah.
just a style.
No, I read it somewhere.
Yeah.
Really?
Also, like, depends. Like, if you have them done almond shaped, it's not as bad than if you have them done like.
Like that's like overgrown. That's like unkept.
Right. That's where we're gonna go with on this one.
It's for the Q&A after.
What?
I'm getting why
It's for the Q&A
Reuven was
after.
scared to come. Yeah.
What?
I'm getting why Reuven was ran away.
Go ahead.
Okay, another quality of
I'm
Chassidus.
listening.
You're doing great.
No, you're doing great.
Okay, thanks.
Go. Sorry.
Another quality of Chassidus is that the purpose of Chassidus is to transform your emotional attributes, to transform your nature into something godly. So like I said before, it was like you had like the school of Musar, which was very prominent, and it was like, hey, these are all the things you should never do. And the godliness stuff is something you should run to do. It was like, hey, all these natural character traits of yours that are bad, they're bad and you should get rid of them. And the concept of Chassidus came and said, hey, utilize those things for the purpose of good. Instead of just shunning them and pushing them away, utilize them for good. So that was another aspect of Chassidus. The next idea of Chassidus is that every single person, whether you had like a high neshama that came from the world of Bria, or you had a really lowly neshama and you couldn't really learn a lot, you could now understand. Chassidus came and basically dumbed down the deeper parts of Torah.
Wait, hold on, just before
Yes.
the other one.
Yeah, go on.
I'm gonna stop interrupting.
Yeah, go
you,
ahead,
but
do your thing.
What you just said before,
Mm-hmm.
with the taking your negative qualities and making them into something positive,
Mhm.
is that the whole animal self thing?
So Chassidus basically enabled every single person to understand the inner dimension of the Torah. Whereas before it was like, don't learn Kabbalah until you're 40 and don't unless you're a Talmud Chacham and all this other stuff. Chassidus was like, hey, the Torah is the Torah, and every single one of us has 5 parts of our soul, and these 5 parts of our soul correspond to the 5 parts of Torah, the Pshat, Remesh, Drash, Drush, and Sod, as well as the Chassidus. It relates to the 5 parts of our soul, which are the Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, the Chaya, and the Yechidah, which we'll get to a little bit later. And this way, you, as a human being, can attain and understand lofty concepts that normally these things were saved for the tzaddikim, for the righteous. Okay. Now, yeah. Go ahead.
What year, I don't remember, was the Baal Shem Tov alive?
In the 1700s.
I don't know.
1700s.
I meant to ask before when you said.
Remember that?
Just making the exact years.
Okay. My other initial one. My this one, but
Thank you.
before I got to this one.
Yeah. Okay. Are we good? Are we good with time?
Hmm?
Are we good? We're still good?
Yeah.
Okay. You tell me. This
I
is your
feel like
shear.
another, it's not my shirt.
Okay, good. Yeah.
I don't know from 5 to 9.
Okay, great.
I do like the whole animal soul thing, but I feel like we're not up to that.
Yeah, no.
I really want to be up to that though.
Okay, but you gotta wait.
Ricky doesn't wait.
I don't wait.
Okay, fine.
I'm sorry.
All right.
Don't make her wait.
Okay. So another thing of Chassidus, which is actually super important that we never talked about, is that Chassidus has its own essence. And even though it shines light on all the different parts of the Torah, like I could take a Pshat, I can take a Gemara and give you the Chassidic perspective on it. On the other hand, that doesn't necessarily capture the essence of it, right? Like you can say that the benefit of a certain thing is that it does lots of things for other things, but that doesn't necessarily capture the fact of what it actually is on its own. So the nature of Chassidus is that it's its own essential creation that is removed from any particular idea. And that's that sort of, this twofold situation that I'm telling you about, that you can use Chassidus as goggles to look and say, how do I infuse, what's the Chassidic perspective on this? How do I infuse Chassidic, shine a Chassidic light on this pshat that I'm looking at? Versus, hey, what is the actual Chassidus on this? So I'll give you an example. Let's just say you look at the fact that, David HaMelech sinned with Bathsheba, right? And you're like, oh, look, he sent her husband to get killed. It's a baller move, by the way. He sends her husband out. Go to war, sorry. And then you can be like, oh, okay, well, what is the Chassidic perspective on the same thing? And you see a story that is completely different, which we won't get into right now because it's a longer story. But when you look at it from the light, you're like, wait a second. David HaMelech had no Yetzer Hara. He killed it by fasting 70 fasts, right? And when you have no Yetzer Hara, you can't do things for the same reasons that us humans do it, right? We're like, oh, he really liked her, and so you killed her husband, right? But you're like, this is David HaMelech, the guy who wrote Tehillim, right? Like, he has no Yetzer Hara. He killed his Yetzer Hara. How could it be that he sinned? Or when you look at Moshe Rabbeinu and you're like, oh, Moshe, yeah, he made a mistake. He hit the rock, right? And could have talked to it. But like, this is Moshe Rabbeinu. Like, he took us out of Mitzrayim and he speaks to God directly and God speaks through his throat and he doesn't need a filter and he doesn't need, right? So you're like, when you look at it through the light of Chassidus, you're like, oh, that's what happened. That makes so much more sense than the fact that what Moshe got lazy and you're like, yeah, okay, I'm gonna hit the rock, right? Like that's just, it doesn't make sense. Which is why the Chassidic perspective speaks to me so much, because all these apparent things that seem a certain way in Torah, like whenever I go to a shul and a rabbi says, how do you think Avram Avinu felt when he couldn't have a baby at, whatever? How do you think so? I'm like, these people are considered chariots to Hashem. They have no will of their own, right? A chariot doesn't choose where it goes. A chariot just goes where the horses lead it, right? And the rider leads it. When Hashem is the one that's driving the chariot, if you're Avram Avinu and you have no will of your own, then you don't get to choose where you go. It's just Hashem, pick me. I'm with you, right? There's no decision making in the, we're going to talk about them like they're regular humans, right? Like tzaddikim don't have that, right? And later we're going to get into how most people that we know are not actually tzaddikim, even though they're great people and they do lots of Torah and mitzvahs. Like tzaddik is someone who has zero Yetzer Hara. So when you, and like literally no one's even chirping in your ear. So no one's even chirping in your ear. So you're just like, how could you talk about this? So looking at things from this Chassidic perspective, you get to see things.
You've been cheating off me on the test at the end.
Cheater with the water bottle with the water.
How are you supposed to
Oh,
do
wait,
that?
You're not. No, you're not. But that's part of the problem.
Wait, what? That to be like the tzaddikim?
She says, how are you supposed to relate to the tzaddikim? And that's what I'm saying. Because so you and I and everyone else that we know.
Why do we try to learn from that?
Right.
What do you mean?
So
Rabbi Dexter said you could be like Moshe Rabbeinu, where one thing is essential, keep climbing and striving until you reach your full potential.
right. So
By the way, someone should tell me.
So I'll tell
Where's
you.
the dead fish?
I'll tell you that for me, it's super off-putting to think that my goal in life is to become one of those. Because I can tell you right now, I'm not going to.
Learn those stories is like.
There's still a musar to learn from what they do, because the goal is to never do any averos. The goal is to only do mitzvahs. The difference between us and tzaddikim is not whether we do only mitzvahs. It's whether someone's chirping in our ear or not, telling us not to do them or to go against them. Okay? And whenever you hear about a tzaddik or a rasha, these are like borrowed terms that people either want to describe someone and say that they're great, or when you're talking about reward and punishment, you're like, okay, well, you hear this story that someone dies and goes to Shamayim, and then they stand them on the scale, and it's like, do you have more schuyos or do you have more averos? Where do you go, right? Everyone's so concerned with where do you go? Do I get the nice cold room with the Baramayim Chaim and a Gemara, or I have to go chill down south, right? You don't want that. So you're like, okay, well, what do I have more? Are you for weight purposes, are you a tzaddik or a rasha? Those are borrowed terms. But the actual definitions, according to Gemara, of tzaddikim and rashan, has nothing to do with your merits or where you belong after 120 years. It has everything to do with who's driving the ship. So
Like your ability to bring God into this world and see him throughout, is that what you mean by driving the ship?
no, meaning
Like God is.
you as a person
Yeah,
make decisions every day,
right.
every single second. Your
So
whole
would you like God
your
make
whole-
decisions with you?
no,
Let him
the whole every single second of every single day in your life is a crossroads, no matter which way you look at it. Because when Hashem created Bittul Torah,
Mhm.
you literally, every single person can be liable of that at every single second. Because if you're literally doing something for a second where you could have been learning Torah, you're over on Bittul Torah, right?
Crazy.
So the crossroads that we all have has zero to do with us being over or not. It's, hey, right now I have an opportunity to either do what Hashem wants or to not do what Hashem wants. That is the crossroads that you have to overcome every day. The difference between a tzaddik and a rasha or whoever's in between is all about, when you get to that crossroads, do you have like the little angel whispering in this ear and the devil in the other ear and they're fighting each other? It's like, who rules the city, right? So imagine you have a city with two mayors and they're both fighting for control. If one mayor is talking loudly and you can't hear the other one, it's going to be easy to choose correctly because you're not fighting anyone. But if they're both yapping in your ear all day, then sometimes you're going to listen here and sometimes listen there, and it's going to be a whole battle. Tzaddikim don't have the little devil guy, or he lives there, he's inside, but he has like the tape over his mouth and he's tied up and he can't yell. So the tzaddik doesn't even hear him. So it's like, okay, you might have made an incorrect judgment call, but you didn't try to sin. You didn't try to do an avera, right? The difference between us and them, all that has to do with is, like, let me put it this way. I could do every mitzvah in the world and never sin for 80 years and die that way. In your mind, I'm going to Gan Eden, right? Because I've only done mitzvahs the whole time. And that's where I'd go. But that doesn't mean that I didn't spend every single second of those 80 years hearing someone chirping in my ear going, treif, 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 right? Whatever they're yelling in my ear, right? And the Yetzer Hara is real sneaky. Sometimes he comes to you dressed as a chassid and tells you to do this because it's good, and really he's derailing you. There's all sorts of things. But the difference between whether you become, whether you go to Gan Eden or not has nothing to do with whether you're a tzaddik or not. It has everything to do with your actions. The difference between whether you're actually a tzaddik or not is all about who's driving. That's what I'm saying. Who are you listening to?
What about Shema Yipol Tzadik Bakam? Like, isn't that an idea that a tzaddik falls 7 times?
Right.
Like that?
So, yeah.
So, does that not contradict what we're saying?
That's how
Tzad-
don't
Tzaddikim can do tshuva also. When we get into deeper meaning of what tshuva is, you'll see that it doesn't necessarily mean, so tshuva doesn't necessarily mean that you did some wrongdoing that now you have to be right. It just means you're reaching a higher state than you were before. It's a very lofty, long concept, but I hear what you're saying, and you're not wrong. But this idea that a tzaddik has to do an avera in order to then do tshuva for it, that's not the true meaning of tshuva. That's like what we hear as like common folks, right? Like Hashem and Katana, right? And now you're doing tshuva, right? But actual tshuva is returning. This is not going to make any sense to you, but just one little thing. It's returning.
I leave. Okay,
It's
okay.
returning
It's not gonna make sense to yourself.
the latter hey of Hashem's name of Yud Kei Vav Kei, which is his Shechina. It says that when the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, that the Shechina left with it, right? And the Shechina got sucked down into like the lowest of the lows, and it's returning the Shechina back to its original source. So Hashem wants his name Yud Kei Vav Kei to be whole all the time, and the lower hey is not necessarily there because it's sitting down way low because of all of our veros and the destructions of the Beis Hamikdash. The returning of the hey to the name Yud Kei Vav Kei, which I know is all gibberish right now, that's what tshuva really is. So tshuva doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do something wrong and then go back. Tshuva means that you're elevating to a state that you weren't in before. So tzaddikim can do tshuva as well as people who are not tzaddikim.
Could regular people become tzaddikim?
Yes, but that is a gift from Hashem. If you crush the in-between status, and then Hashem decides to bring you up to the majors, can I make sports references here?
Yeah.
Okay, then Hashem pulls you up into the majors.
How do you know?
I always tell my baby she's like my tzaddik, but I shouldn't call her that. She won't
I know. I always like odds my little Saturday, but they're not. Guys,
She could think.
Call her whatever you want. I mean,
I don't want her to think she's
Call
like
her.
that.
So the tzaddikim that we say call tzaddikim.
So
there's no way for you
Gedolim.
to know.
There's no way for us to know.
There's no way.
Okay.
like when you say, "Oh, he's a total tzaddik,"
Let me put it this
chances are
way.
he's not.
Let me put it this way.
That's not necessarily true. That's not what he's saying.
I'm not saying that they're not.
Saying that we don't
I'm
know.
just
We don't
saying
know.
that
We
people
don't
are
know.
so quick to say, that guy's a tzaddik because he learns Torah all day, right? He sits in yeshiva and he learns Torah all day, and he only eats one little pomegranate every few hours before he goes to Tikkun Chatzot
That's nice.
at the kotel, right? So you're like, okay, great, this guy's a tzaddik. It could be that guy's not a tzaddik at all. That doesn't mean he ever sins. It just means that he never listens to the little devil guy. So his actions are really good, but you have no way to know what's inside of a person. And when it comes to Avos Yisrael, it's actually much easier to not judge people because you're like, hey, maybe that person has a really loud Yetzer Hara always in his ear, and I just am like tame. Like, look, some people are born super passionate about lots of things, and those things speak to them, and they feel very fiery and drive. Right? They have lots of drive to do all these things, and some people just like don't really have much desire, and so that person doesn't have as big of a Yetzer Hara in certain things. But I have no way to know what's inside of you, right? And no one knows. And so, how can I judge any Jew when I don't know? I'm not standing in their footsteps. I can't hear, if there's a guy on like the camp PA system yelling, "Do Averas," right? I have no idea. And I don't know what's within every single one of you. All I know is that every single one of us has the ability to never do Averas. It's super hard. But even if you spent your whole life never doing any Averas and only doing mitzvahs, that wouldn't make you a tzaddik by definition, by the true definition.
So how do you become a tzaddik?
You have to crush the in-between game, and then Hashem fight the crossroads every single time and choose
You have to
right
really
every
love
time.
Hashem.
You have to choose to the right every single time. Like every day, every second is a crossroads.
But I thought you said even if you do the right thing.
Hashem has to then be like, you've been crushing it for long enough, and I want to make you a tzaddik.
Hashem
That's
is
why
not
it's-
annoyed you.
Say
That's
the
why
thing,
it says-
say this,
And then
say
he
this.
tries,
And then he pulls you, and then he pulls you.
but then how can you do an Avera if you're tzaddik?
You can't.
You don't know.
You don't.
That's what he's
That's
And
why
you
I'm
don't have that
saying.
voice
That's
anymore.
what I'm saying.
So
What?
it's not, so anytime we see in the Torah.
That's why there's so
it's an
few of
Avera
them.
and, oh, something happened.
If you learn the
What is
Chassidus on them,
Avera?
you'll see that
Hashem.
you'll see, yes, there is a purpose. Moshe Rabbeinu could not go into Eretz Yisrael.
It wasn't an act of doing wrong.
Moshe couldn't have gone into Israel. And Moshe knew that too, which is why he hit the rock.
Was his people.
He couldn't go because if he would, Mashiach would have come and that would have been the end of it. And that wasn't how Hashem saw it happening. And so Moshe knew that. Along the way, there's lots of questionable calls. If you look at it through the lens of Chassidus, which brings light into places that weren't dark, but now you get to see it through another lens, all of a sudden you're like, wow, this story is super different. And I could do that about the most basic story, right?
Go back to these Yaakov and Tarshish. That's not.
So it's not, if anything, like, it's not to deter you, like to say, hey, you'll never be a tzaddik. For me, it's very relieving. It's like, this is amazing. This whole time I thought I had this unachievable lifetime goal. And actually, that's not my purpose. That's not my goal. My goal is to just keep winning small battles along the way. I don't have to become a tzaddik. I
How do
don't
you know your purpose?
because you would know if you're a tzaddik and if you
No,
ever
in
have a
general,
tzaddik.
like in life, how do you know your purpose?
I'm not saying you know. And actually, people that aren't tzaddikim, they don't know their purpose. That's why,
So we make up our purpose.
no. Tzaddikim know where their purposes are. So they go to
Okay.
places in the world and say, now I have to be here because I have a job to do and I have to be here and I have a
Right,
job to do.
Okay.
Everyone else is just along for the ride and it's, what do I do now that I'm here? Because you
Right.
have no way to know. That's why people will ask a Rebbe, hey, should I take this job or not? Should I go move here for this opportunity? Should I marry this person? Because they don't necessarily see all the pathways and where they lead to, but the architects can read blueprints. So they know what Hashem has in store. It doesn't, all we can do is say, okay, now that I'm here, I can choose right or left. And that's what it says, that there's no there's no free choice other than Yiras Hashem, Yiras Shamayim. The free choice is, yes, we are led to think that we got somewhere because we chose to go there. And yes, everyone has free choice, but the free choice is really, are you choosing correctly at the crossroads that you're at right now?
So tzaddik doesn't have a hero.
A tzaddik?
Yeah.
Technically not. He's a chariot to Hashem's will. So he really doesn't. But
But Bahir is not necessarily a good thing, because it's not the,
Well, you don't have that.
It is
that
for us
picture
because
of
for
it-
us,
two guys.
it is for us because that's part of the video game, right? Hashem programmed this whole system and said, okay,
for us
Find
it is,
me.
But I'm saying, if you want to be, I mean, obviously we're not going to become any tzaddikim, tzaddik, whatever.
you could,
But, okay, we could, but I'm just saying. if
but it's
that
not
is
your
what-
doing.
Have faith
But
in you.
what, that's what we're trying to do, then the hero wouldn't be for us
It's not really applicable to us.
in that situation.
Good for yourself.
Okay, yeah, it's applicable to Mickey.
You could try.
You can try to be the best intermediate that you can be, and then hope that Hashem pulls you up into the majors. But that part won't be your doing; it'll be His. Imagine you just get
Won't take credit.
right.
Oh, can we wear shirts?
I'm just kidding.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Okay. Any questions?
More
You
Q&A?
also mentioned that our neshamas come already from different levels.
Mhm.
How does that work? Like,
There's actually like a how neshamas are born. There's like a actual spiritual like gestational period where they're kind of like grown like a baby, and then they're birthed.
But aren't we parts of neshamos? Like there was only X amount of neshamos.
So there's
and we're all- Like we could
600,000.
share a piece of the same
Right.
neshama.
There's 600,000 parent. There's 600,000 parent neshamas.
Right, you vibe.
neshama true.
Right. So there's 600,000 parent neshamas, and then those neshamas have
Have like
break
parts.
off child neshamas.
Can you know, like, is there a way to tell a little bit, like, what level, like, let's say someone is like a really deep type of person, and then someone who's like couldn't care less. Like, is that an indicator a little bit about like where their neshama is?
Honestly, I don't know that
I feel
because
like
I don't have that vision.
it is.
But I can tell you that when people came to certain tzaddikim, actual tzaddikim,
Yeah.
when they came to them, they would be able to see their neshama root and be able to tell them sort of what their purposes are and where they're supposed to go, and right. So like that's why when you hear stories about like, you know, there's this famous, I don't know if you ever heard this, the fifth night of Hanukkah story, the this guy who met the Lubavitcher Rebbe when he was like a teenager in Europe, and then the Rebbe told him a Dvar Torah about the fifth night of Hanukkah, and then he met him 20 years later somewhere else. Now he was married. He was the son-in-law of the previous Rebbe, and then 20 years after that he came, and every time through generations, I mean, there were people that he would see in Eastern Europe somewhere, and then not see them for 50 years, and they would walk up and he'd say, "Hi, remember we talked, blah blah blah," and they were like, "How do you know that it's me?" Because he could see their neshamas and he wasn't looking at their faces. Tzaddikim could see, but because they don't see the physical matter that we see, they see what's behind it.
Tzaddikim like this
So
see-
it's
are actually around.
so it says that Hashem created tzaddikim, and that he planted them in each generation because the world needs tzaddikim.
But it doesn't say how many.
The Baal Shem Tov was one of the Nistarim,
Have
and there
they
was
in America or they're all in Israel?
I don't know who they are.
Isn't there
Like you go to
96
certain people and they
No,
can
you're
tell
saying
you
the
what
wrong
you
one.
want.
No,
Certain
he
people
like
are
took iron off of
Kabbalists.
my husband
They
and
they
I.
can
He,
see
like, was like doing these
stuff.
things, and the room felt.
Is there a way to
It was
prove that
wild.
you are? one of these people?
anyone
Like,
who
wow.
is won't care to prove it to you.
You feel.
Right.
You feel the
Yeah.
feeling.
If they care, they're probably not one of them. Yeah. Yeah. And they're probably going to charge you for it.
Seminary.
No, this like you felt like a
This is
and like
like
in the
like
room.
you gave him
And he was like
your
telling us
your
things
full
that like
name, your
there was
father's
no way
name,
we
mother's
could have
name,
known.
Mhm.
and like he really
And things that
he
like
told
we
me
didn't
things
even know that
Yeah.
ended up.
he like knew
Like
things
crazy
about my
things.
parents.
Right.
So crazy.
What
So
does that
one
mean
thing,
about it?
obviously he's a holy guy. I'm not, but again, you could become very holy and knowledgeable and learn to read the blueprints by just making a lifetime worth of amazing decisions and not making the bad ones. It doesn't necessarily. What's that?
Or based off of
What?
experience.
Yeah, there are.
The Torah is a blueprint for the whole world, okay? So me, you, we're all written in the Torah somewhere, or else we couldn't exist, because the Torah is what actually gives sustenance to every created being. Because Hashem took himself and condensed himself into the words of the Torah, and the Torah is actually Hashem packaged, and it has all the creative power that Hashem has. And therefore, because Hashem, it says that he istakel b'oraita barak, right? He looked in the Torah, and then he created. There can't be anything in this world that exists that wasn't in the Torah, because imagine I had blueprints for a house, and then I built a part of the house that wasn't on the plan. Like Hashem looked in the plans and created the world. Everything has to be here. So just because there are certain people who can look into parts of the Torah, like there's all these Kabbalists who will be like, oh, if you go into this parsha and look at every 18 letters, and they'll be like, look, here's your name, right? Or like, there's different tzaddikim in the stories of the Baal Shem Tov, how they used to be able to say like certain names of melachim, and the Baal Shem Tov would do like a 3-day journey in 3 hours with his horse and buggy, right? Did something called kfitzat haderech, like jumping the way, right? Like there's definitely, like as Jews, like our whole religion is based on Kriyas Yamsuf and the plagues in Mitzrayim and the mountain floating and on fire. Like the miraculous shouldn't be so crazy to us. It shouldn't be so foreign. Like every Chag that you celebrate is based on things that you can't see with your own eyes, right? Like the whole foundation for everything is based on that. So it's not just because you're far from it. Like if you went, 75 years ago to Morocco and you saw the Baba Sali was doing miracles like in his sleep, left and right. It wasn't a big deal for him, right? Like that stuff, the fact that we live above nature should be no surprise to anyone. We're just so far removed that it feels like, oh my God, this is witchcraft, right? Like, what are you talking about? But like, even the witchcraft in the world is a real thing. Today, all these palm readers and all this other stuff, most of them are just like salespeople trying to sell you stuff, right? Back in the day, like Rambam talks all about all this sorcery and all these fortune tellers and horoscope. Like, today you go Instagram and you type in horoscope, you're gonna have 9,000 posts telling you what you are as a Pisces, right? Like, but these people are just making up stuff because people click on it and it makes you feel good, like Instagram knows you. But Rambam talks about these real things, these real powers exist. Hashem planted them in the world, right? You can go about them in a kosher way or not. That doesn't make them less real. So the fact that there are righteous people who are able to, sort of grab onto those things, but from a holy way, is really not that crazy. When you believe that the sea split into 12 different paths and we all walk through it, and all these plagues and all this stuff in Mitzrayim, like, okay, who cares? You could tell me that my name's in the Torah. Like, relatively, it seems far away, but it's like, what's the big deal, For Hashem that can do anything, it's just not, it makes you feel connected. And actually, there's a very famous letter that the Lubavitcher Rebbe's father-in-law, he was the sixth Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rebbe Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson. He wrote to the Rebbe and basically said to him, I don't support like all these miracles. Like Jews we're not a religion that's based on like proving through miracles that Hashem exists. And the Rebbe was actually very firm and said that after the Jews were decimated on the Holocaust, and that this is what we've experienced, the Jews need a pick-me-up. And that's why you see so many, from the Baba Sali to the Rebbe to lots of different places, and people have all these different stories I've heard of different Rebbes, going to them when they couldn't have kids or when they whatever, and just miracles. It used to be that was all like, if you look at the Midrash and you look at some different Torah sources and stories in the Gemara, like in Maseches Tanis, there's a guy who would go out into his field and see where the crops weren't growing and needed rain, and he would point to different places, and Hashem would make it rain in spots on his thing, right? Like that was common practice. All the big Rebbeim we're talking about, this guy and all his miracles, right? Or like Nachum Ish Gamzu when he came to give the king sand, and the king put him in jail because all his stuff, his gold and diamonds and whatever got stolen, and then the sand, they told the king that it was like special Jewish sand, which if you throw it at the enemies in battle, it kills them all. And that's what happened, right? Like this is all in the Gemara. So just because we're far removed doesn't make it not real. But this was all accessible to lots of Jews, not just, random. Like if you were living in the time of Babylon, you would these people were shechting each other on Purim and then reviving each other, right? Like, it sounds crazy now, but lots of stuff went down. Good?
Thank you.
Okay, if you have questions, you ask me.
Okay, we're good.
We-
How long